Hi, my name's Allison, and when I was just 5 years old, my mom passed away. For years, it was just me and my dad. We would go on adventures every weekend together, hiking in the nearby mountains, camping in the forest, reading books together in our backyard. We were like best friends. But then one day, everything changed. My dad met Sylvia. Pretty soon after, Sylvia and her daughter Elsie moved in, and we became one big happy family. Not. Okay. When my dad asked me how I felt about it all, I just smiled and said, "I'm happy if you are." I don't normally tell lies, but he really did look so happy, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Even when he asked her to marry him, I baked a cake to celebrate and tried my hardest to be okay with it. It wasn't so bad when they first moved in. Dad is a bit messy, so it was nice to have some other females around the house to help out a bit. And Sylvia is super organized, so she really took control and did the house up. It looked great. But then it started to get a bit much. Elsie complained that my room was bigger than hers, so Dad agreed to break down my wall, making my room smaller than hers. I tried to tell him that wasn't fair. It was my house first. But Dad just said we need to keep everyone happy. Dad works at the university, and sometimes he has to work late. I don't know when it started, but one day, Sylvia just began treating me differently. On the nights Dad was at work, she'd say it was my turn to cook, and she always made me help Elsie with her homework, saying that I was lucky to be so smart and that I should share my smartness with my sister. I started to dread nights alone with them, as they had already started to gang up on me. One night, I was in the bath, and I heard them laughing nearby. I quickly dried off and tiptoed out into the hall. I could see them through the crack in the door of my dad's study. They were looking at old photos of my mom and saying she was ugly, and what had my dad been thinking when he had married someone like that? Elsie kept saying how much more beautiful Sylvia was than my mom. I couldn't bear hearing this. And then I heard Sylvia saying that she had taken $400 from my dad to buy a new handbag, but she didn't even tell him. I was getting more annoyed. My dad wasn't doing that well financially, and we don't usually buy expensive clothes or bags. The next thing I heard was glass smashing. I ran into the study, almost dropping my towel on the way. When they saw me, they quickly jumped up and said they'd heard a crash and come running in. On the floor was the framed photo of my mom and dad on their wedding day, and one of us as a family of 3. The glass was smashed and the photos were slightly creased. They were lying to me. They had knocked them off the shelf. I looked at them both with tears in my eyes and ran to my room. As soon as my dad got home, I told them everything they'd said and done. Dad didn't believe me at all and said accidents happen and that Sylvia would never be so cruel to say something like that about Mom. He kept saying how Sylvia loves me and thinks the world of me. The next few weeks just got worse. They started teasing me about my skin. I'd recently got a few pimples, and I felt so self-conscious about them. Elsie even said that I'm dirty, and that's why I have so many pimples and no date for the school dance. That day, it happened to be my dad's birthday, so I was making his favorite meal. While I was cooking, Sylvia started shouting at me to clean up her toenails that she'd just cut. They were all over the floor. And then she said I needed to hurry up so I could write Elsie's history paper for tomorrow. I said I was busy, and couldn't Elsie do it by herself? Then she started screaming at me so much that she actually threw her cup of boiling hot tea at me. I crouched onto the floor, and thankfully it missed me by an inch. I was still shocked when she started shouting at me louder and saying she doesn't understand why I'm in her life and that she doesn't even love my father anymore. At that exact moment, my dad walked through the door. He saw me cowering by the stove and Sylvia marching towards me with her arms raised. He looked straight at Sylvia and said at the top of his voice, "Stop!" Turns out, he'd come home early to surprise us for his birthday. And when he'd heard Sylvia bossing me around, he'd hid around the door listening. Sylvia burst into tears and said she didn't mean it, she was having a bad day, and it was just a big misunderstanding. Before she could even finish, my dad came towards me and gave me a huge hug. He apologized to me for not believing me. And then he turned to Sylvia. He ordered her to pack her and Elsie's stuff and get out of his house immediately. She was hysterical by then and was begging to stay. But my dad said he was done. He would be filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Then he turned back to me, gave me a kiss on my head, and said this was turning out to be the best birthday he'd had in years. Finally, it was just me and my dad again. What do you think of this story? Please feel free to share your stories and comments in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Hello, I am Jane and here's my story. Like everyone else, I look at myself in the mirror several times a day. I mean, we all like to check how we look before we go out, right? However, I'm not going to talk about my physical appearance or my outfits. So let's switch the focus to insecurities. I believe we all have insecurities and some traits we wish we could change about ourselves, right? This whole nagging issue started years ago, when all of a sudden, I felt like I was completely worthless. Honestly, it wasn't all of a sudden, but I screwed up a lot. Do you know what's even worse than feeling worthless? It's blaming yourself for everything wrong in your life and in the lives of people around you. First, I wasn't a good student in school. It's true I didn't get Fs, but all my grades were Cs and Ds. When you're not doing well in school, at least you do well in other spheres, right? That didn't happen in my case. I was such a shy kid and socially awkward. I never initiated a conversation with anyone, and whenever I made a comment, everyone ignored me. That's why I decided to remain silent all the time. Oh, and let's not talk about my relationship with my siblings or relatives. My parents are great, but I always felt that they preferred my older siblings over me. I can understand them. My two older brothers are very accomplished and social. They have many friends and are praised by everyone in our neighborhood. The fact that I come from a small town perhaps adds to the severity of the issue in my eyes. People called me Jane Shane, and I never understood why. Maybe Shane comes from shy and rhymes with Jane. I don't know. But whoever made this name up is not funny, and I hope he or she is listening to my story now. Anyway, the failures in my life didn't cease. They even became my reality and the definition of Jane. Therefore, I hated to look in the mirror, because whenever I did, I started to make up scenarios in my head of what other people thought about me. That killed me. I hated the way I looked and thought and behaved. I wanted to be smarter and more popular. Little did I know then, accomplishments don't come your way. You need to run their way and fight to achieve them. The next step came after I watched a motivational video on YouTube, which shed the light on problems and insecurities like mine. I figured out then that I am not alone in this. I still remember that rainy day in late December when I looked at myself in the mirror and said, "Jane, you are worthy of love and respect." My life changed after that moment. I worked very hard to earn the life I wished I'd had. I worked hard to become who I am today, and that worked perfectly. I work in a huge company now, and I am happily newly married. My message is simple. Everyone feels weak and worthless at times, but if you do something about it, you can move any mountain and overcome any obstacle. What do you think of this story? Share your success story or your ambitions for the future in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.